why do so many sellers like tie their self-worth to like hitting this number?
Well, first of all, I think there's a very specific type of person that gets into sales. That personality type likes sales because they feel like they have control over the outcomes, which is such a slippery slope because we don't have as much control as we would like or hope. When we are on top of the mountain and we are exceeding quota, it feeds us like nothing else. We feel like we are on top of the world. I knew I was the best. I told you I was the best. But if you're in sales, to keep yourself there, you will end up driving yourself into depression, anxiety, addiction, burnout.
Welcome to Limitless Minds, the podcast where curiosity meets greatness. Each week, co-host DJ Eidson and Harry Wilson sit down with some of the most exceptional individuals across sports, business, and beyond. From world-class athletes and peak performance coaches to visionary CEOs, entrepreneurs, and influential authors, they dive deep into the stories and strategies that drive extraordinary success. If you're ready to discover what it takes to be truly limitless and push beyond your own limits, you're in the right place.
On today's Limitless Minds podcast, we have Nikki Lang. Really, this episode, honestly, this is for sellers who want to be great. If you're not a seller, this still works for you. You should still tag in. But this one is for anybody that's looking for a competitive edge beyond just tactics and talk tracks as a seller. Our guest is Nikki Lang, a current world-class enterprise sales pro turned mindset coach and the founder of Mindset and Sales, a platform helping sellers sharpen their mental game, build resilience, and find consistent, confident performance without burning out or losing momentum in the process. She brings a rare blend of experience, insight, and grounded perspective. And today, we're diving into her journey, the biggest mindset traps sellers face, and the tools you can use to take your performance to the next level. Enjoy. All right, welcome to the Limitless Minds podcast. On this episode, we have our friend Nikki Lang. I'm just really excited about sharing Nikki with our audience. I got a chance to have a little like one-on-one QT virtually with Nikki. It's a handful of days ago, and I've been following her on the platforms that exist, particularly LinkedIn.
Yeah.
And I feel like she's I don't know, she just kind of represents kind of part of our DNA here at Limitless, and just really a badass enterprise seller in her career, kind of one of those world-class sellers, but now getting into the things that I think are really important relative to performing as a corporate athlete, the mindset component of it. So Nikki, thanks for joining.
What an intro. Thank you so much. Yeah, it's been a whirlwind. It really has, but I enjoy the mindset piece of it so much. It's been an honor, honestly, to connect with other sellers and to help them navigate a career in sales and how to show up as their best selves, and honestly, how to survive, because it's a tough career to navigate. So it's been incredibly rewarding.
Yeah, for sure. So listen, we're going to get into some of your history and journey in selling. Certainly the foundation for what you've started called Mindset and Sales, and beyond. I just want to get some of your philosophies and all that jazz. But like, I'm going to start this off with a little bit of a question that I haven't even told DJ I'm going to ask. And DJ, I want your response too. Nikki,
look out, Nikki.
Response. But
beware.
This is
Ready.
I don't know if this is that deep, but it's interesting because I don't know that everybody's thinking about it, right? And for us, I think it might be something we think about regularly. But what's more important for a seller's long-term success? Emotional resilience or product knowledge?
Ooh, emotional resilience. I mean, hands down. Yeah. Because your product is probably going to change multiple times throughout your career, right? So like, I've sold for a number of companies at this point, and I can learn about any product. Like it takes me, it depending on how complex it is, it can take me anywhere from a couple weeks to a few months, but I can learn about product. But that emotional awareness, maturity, regulation piece of it, that is something that really has to be cultivated and practice over time, and will carry you through all of those different experiences. So to me, like the product knowledge part of it is kind of like the easy part. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
What about
Well, I mean,
where would you fit like process in to that?
Okay.
Like Yeah.
That's
So tell me a
that's a
little bit
good
about that.
question. So I am having this conversation with a lot of sales leaders right now because, and I shared some content around this just last week. I think I work in tech sales, right? So, like in tech sales specifically, there has been this recent, like in the past, I would say 5 to 8 years, obsession with sales process, like obsession. I mean, medic, challenger sale, like gap selling, like all of the different methodologies, right? And so we have, I think it's for a few reasons, but the nature of the industry is very analytical, right? Like I work in tech. And so run mostly by men, by men for men. And they can be
Yeah.
very, data driven, logic driven, right? So we have had this total over rotation into the process side of selling, but there is a spectrum. There is the formulaic process tactic side of sales, and there is the art of selling. The art of selling,
Mm.
which is human connection, listening, communication, writing, like, and we have somehow gotten pushed so far over here that we've totally lost sight of the art piece of it all.
Yeah.
And so my
Mm.
hypothesis, my theory is that in the age of AI, where everything is going to become automated and AI generated, we are going to crave the human aspect even more because everything is going to start feeling really artificial, right?
Oh
Mhm.
Like
yeah.
we're going to become exhausted by wondering if this is a human who wrote this email or a bot. That's going to
Mm-hmm.
be exhausting for us humans eventually. So we have overcorrected into the sales process side, and what I see as being the superpower of sellers in the future is their human artistic side of being able to connect with another human being on a human to human level. Like you cannot
Something.
outsource that to AI. You can't.
Yeah.
Love it.
So like, I think we've been living here and I think we need to push back a little bit more in the middle and focus on the unscalable aspects of sales. That's my
Yeah.
Mm.
hypothesis.
I
That
love it. I mean, I
dang,
think
I really
I
like
buy it.
that.
I think that, like I asked the question about like emotional resilience versus product knowledge. Listen, I knew what you were going to say to this.
I mean,
Come
obviously.
on, right? But I think that I think that the follow up question, and as well as what DJ's follow up question is like if emotional resilience or mindset or psychological flexibility, adversity tolerance, you name the synonym, right? If that's so critical, like does it belong in every sales onboarding, right? In every sales training from the get go, right?
Okay.
Because
Uh-oh.
because the thing
Uh-oh.
about it, we hire for this stuff. We like when we hire teams, like that's how we build our frameworks for hiring. Typically, if you're doing it right, you can show me all the brag books in the world, right? Just I want to find out how you respond when nobody's how do you behave when nobody's looking? How do you respond when shit hits the fan? How do you I'm trying to figure out what your adversity tolerance is like. We hire for that, and then we bring you in, and we're going to just throw a skill set down your throat, right? So, like,
Mhm.
what's your take
I
on like
mean, we knew
beginning
we
of
were gonna vibe on this
yeah,
podcast, but like
yeah,
the things that are coming out of your mouth right now, like the, this is, I literally just got out of a call right before this one, talking to a sales leader where I'm going to be working with their sales team to start to teach this stuff because nobody is teaching this.
Mhm.
And yes, we can hire for it, but it needs reinforcement, it needs development, it needs someone who has been able to implement it within this environment and seen the outcomes to be able to speak directly to it, or else it is just hypothetical. We're speaking in the
Mm.
clouds, we're speaking in, generalizations, but to be able to apply this to your sales process and make it a part of your sales process, that is where, like, no one is doing this. And I made a post about sales tactics, about how they're not my, I'm not like, listen, are sales tactics necessary? Yes. But are they like what light me up about sales? No. Like I will
mhm,
leave the tactical training to the tactical trainers. That is not what interests me the most about the beauty and art of selling. So I'm going to be over here. Like, I'm going to be, teaching this stuff, hopefully training teams on this, like, singing it from the mountaintops so that this does become more part of the everyday conversation around what sales success looks like. Because you can, the year before I had to quit sales for a year because I was so burnt out, I was number one on my team. Is
Yeah.
that success? Like, is
Yeah.
that what success looks like? Like, you win, you get
Right.
to the top of the mountain and you are a shell of a human being. So like,
Mhm.
there has to be a way to win where we are not losing ourselves in the process. And luckily, it also makes for a much better selling experience for our buyer.
No
Would you
doubt.
look at that?
That's awesome. Imagine that, right? Who
Imagine
taught
that. Who would have thought?
That's right. Who taught you how to sell?
Oh, what a good question. Oh my gosh. Okay, so a little bit about my story. So I was in sales for 6 years before I came into SaaS. I started in SaaS as a BDR, like before I even knew tech sales was a thing. I just happened to be in Charleston, where like one of the only businesses that wasn't in food and bev was Blackbaud, and it's a software company, and I was a BDR for them, and I was 26 years old and had no idea what tech sales even was. I just happened to be there.
Mhm.
I did that for about 6 months, and it was a lot of fun, and I cut my teeth and I learned a lot. And then I did med device for about 6 years. I did healthcare and med device
Oh,
for
wow.
6 years.
Okay.
And so that's a totally different sales culture, I would say,
Yeah.
than tech. And
Yeah.
so I did very well there, but that was all based on relationship selling. That was all based on having a conversation with a doctor or, an admin person at the practice, getting them to, you had to like sweet talk your way around a gatekeeper. You had to sweet talk your
Let's
way
say
around
gatekeeper. I
the,
was thinking gatekeeper the
yeah,
whole time.
like gatekeeper, the
Yeah.
receptionist, like the
Yeah.
receptionist
Did
girls,
did
like,
you know their lattes? You didn't know their lattes,
yes,
though,
like
did you?
they
You didn't know
become
their
like your besties, right? You're like, okay,
Yep.
how do I get
Yep.
these girls to open up, the keys to the
Exactly.
kingdom? So like
Exactly.
that's what my success was based on, was that
Mhm.
relationship building, that little black book, right? And that's still the reality for a lot of sales on the med device and the healthcare side.
Yep.
And then I got into tech. HackerOne was my first really like closing full cycle sales role in SaaS. And I was very lucky that they had an exceptional enablement program. And I was coming in as an SMB rep, even though I had been selling for 6 years, even though I was already a mother, even though I was 10 years older than all of my peers in my team. I went through the same sales enablement as all of them. And that's when I learned. I learned about sales process. I learned about medic. I learned about asking the right discovery questions, about asking second level questions. I'll never
Mm.
forget my sales leader at the time. We did like a discovery, like certification, and he failed me. He flunked me. And I was like, excuse me?
Like, I'm really
Like,
good.
I
What are you
have
doing?
been selling for 6 years. I'm older than you, I'm like, I've been selling for 6 years already. And he was like, you didn't go deep enough. And so I was like,
Mhm.
okay, like, give me a minute. And I like studied and I figured out what I wasn't doing right. And I did it again. And I was like, I'm going to knock this out of the park. I'm going to kill this. And so I learned everything that I didn't do right or that I didn't do enough of. And I passed the second time. But that experience really added the process side of things into the equation for me. It's like I had the art side and then I added the process side. And then all of a sudden it was like everything unlocked. And I had an incredible run. I was the number one SMB rep in the entire company. I finished 160% to quota, President's Club, the whole thing. And I was like, oh, right. You need both. And
Mhm.
so and then that led to the
Really good.
rest.
I love that.
Love it.
I love that. I
Yeah.
love how she keeps using art, Harry, too. Like, I think of this, like,
Mhm.
you think of you don't really think of sales as an art, but it so much is. You have
Truly
to be able to
is.
read the room and grab, this ingredient, that ingredient, this paint, that canvas, and then you create something beautiful. So I really
Right.
I really like the art
Well,
piece.
I mean, like, listen, we've always made these analogies between sports and business, particularly sports and sales. We hire a lot of former athletes for a reason, not only like their, the discipline they hopefully bring and the mindset they hopefully have and all these different things, but also to your point on this art piece, like, the best athletes, in my opinion, in many ways are artists,
Mm-hmm.
right? From the standpoint of like, they're all doing it different ways. You mimic certain things that some of these athletes do. Some of those things that make them kind of are their trademarks are really an art. So like Michael Jordan sticking his tongue out while dunking,
Yeah.
or like batting stances of your favorite baseball players. Me growing up, whether it be Barry Bonds or Sammy Sosa or whoever it was at the time, right?
Mm.
Like it was so artistic how they approached the game. Everybody the whole goal was hit the baseball, but they all approached it in this really different and unique way, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Even the moves,
Russell. Yeah, I mean Barry Sanders was like an artist out
Right.
there. You know what I mean?
That's right.
Like it's,
Yeah.
Russell's, like Russ in his prime, my brother in his prime was like, it's the ability to scramble and like find receivers on the field was an art, right? Patrick Mahomes, the stuff he does, you're like, how, why, like what, right? It's an art. And so I think it's the same thing in sales, right? I mean, we know that what the end goals are, but like, and I think maybe you mentioned this in some of the content you posted recently, right? And maybe it's the one about the tactics, right? Is it like there's a million different ways to get the deal done,
million
right?
ways to win.
When it comes down to it,
Mhm.
the common denominator is likely, the human connection, which then draws the relationships, which then kind of buys you the permission to close, right?
Yep.
So that is an art, and it's well put. I mean, it makes so much sense. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so timely too. Like you mentioned AI, you mentioned technology. Like you can't mimic that connection with technology. And
You
I think
can't.
that like I was listening to one of the podcasts you were recently on, and you talked about getting in front of the customers and how
Mhm.
important that is. And like again, my computer Zoom can't show up like that. My AI can't show, Chat GPT can't show up in New Jersey in front of the customer. And so I thought that was really, really timely right now, that connection piece.
Yeah, and with the rise of AI, that humanity piece of it is going to become more valuable, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like we are going to seek out those people who are true artists at building that trust and that connection. And they are so fun to watch. Have you ever seen someone just kind of walk into a room, light it up, somehow engage everybody, and like everyone feels lighter and better when they leave? Like it's a marvel to watch someone be able to do that. And I'm not saying that every seller needs to be an extrovert. Like I know that that's another, argument on the street, but to be able to engage and pull people in with the right honest questions and empathy and curiosity, that is what I love about sales. And if like you take that away, I'm no longer interested.
Yep.
Like when it becomes totally mechanical and totally outsourced to AI, I'm like, okay, cool. I'm no longer needed
Yeah.
here. I will go find other ways to connect to human beings around me. Like that
That's great.
that is the piece that lights me up and keeps me going. I remember when I
Yeah.
was selling for HackerOne and I was selling into SMB. So like really transactional fast deals. So I'm in enterprise now. Everything's slow and takes a long time. And it was so much fun because I was meeting so many cool, interesting people all day long. I would have like
Yeah.
6 back-to-back discovery calls in a day. And I would just like sit down so excited because I had no idea who I was going to meet that day. And I was meeting CISOs and founders of tech companies. And who could be more interesting than founders of tech companies? I'm like, oh my gosh, tell me your
I
story. Like,
agree.
how did you get here? Right.
Yeah.
And so coming to those interactions with that curiosity and excitement and genuine joy of meeting
cool.
somebody new, like they feel that. Right. And so like
No.
we have to get back there.
Yeah.
Hey,
No question.
you mentioned something and then you said, well, it's a conversation for another day. I'm curious, actually. I want to talk about this. So
You said today you want that
Yeah,
conversation.
he
Huh?
said,
like,
I'm not on that one though.
you just sparked my thought. Like you mentioned, like, a lot of people I think believe that like great sellers need to be extroverts. what is your take on this? Do you
Yeah.
agree with that?
I
Have you
don't.
seen?
I don't.
Yeah.
I've seen
So yeah.
excellent, incredible sellers who are more introverted. I think that what introverts are incredibly skilled at, more so than extroverts, is listening,
Mhm.
right? It's observing. Like they watch. They watch and they observe. Sometimes extroverts, we can be so, over here that we miss what's happening on the other side of the
Mm,
table. And so I think that for extroverts, what we have to strengthen is being more in tuned with the other person. It's not the Nikki show. Like it doesn't matter how I'm showing up here. Like it matter. You are the one that matters here in this interaction.
mm,
So kind of flipping that attention and perspective onto who I'm talking with. That's something that extroverts have to strengthen. I
mhm.
think that introverts have an innate ability to be more perceptive, pick up on body language, pick up on, little cues. I think that really in tune sellers, you can give them an answer, but they can kind of figure out what's actually going on behind that response and dig a little bit deeper when maybe that's not the full vision
Yeah.
that we,
Mhm.
to help us understand what's happening. Now, there are other areas where an introvert might have to strengthen their skills, right? Being more proactive in reaching out or being persistent, or, right, they might be a little bit more concerned with being a bother, which is something that sellers, like very unhelpful if sellers feel apologetic in
Right,
their
right.
outreach. So I think
Mhm.
that there are strengths, and areas for strengthening on both sides. Yeah.
DJ,
Yeah.
what are you? You an extrovert or introvert? Or what do you think you are?
It depends what setting I'm in,
Mm.
you know?
What is that called? That's called like an omnivert or something?
Ambivert, ambivert.
Ambivert,
is that
that's
what it
it.
is? Yeah,
I
because
think so.
on the weekends, I'm pretty drained from being an extrovert that I turn more introverted. You know, my
Yeah.
neighbors and they'll, hey, why don't you come over and we'll watch the game in the backyard? And I like just being in the house with the kids and my wife and like literally chilling.
Yeah,
And
but you
so
are
it
never
just like so
alone.
I
You
yeah,
have
that's
5
true. That
children.
is true.
I mean,
That is very true. And it's very difficult to get a word in
yeah,
that house too as well. Like,
yeah, I bet.
but yeah, so I think it depends on the setting, Harry. You know, yeah. What about you?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm an ambivert too, I think. I mean, I have certain behaviors that I guess my tolerance is really low.
Mm,
You know what I mean? Which is something I'm working on. Like, I don't typically love small talk. You know what I
oh,
mean?
yeah.
Which I'm not. That's not something I'm proud of. It's not like I'm like waving the flag of like no small talk. It's just something that I know about myself, right? And like in certain scenarios, like I don't really have time for it, and so like I'm working on that. But like yeah, I don't get my energy necessarily from people all the time. But it's kind of like an inspiration thing. There's certain people that I know that make me better, and in those environments, I tend to be more extroverted.
Mm,
Um, and then there's people that are kind of energy vampires, and it turns my introvert dial up, you
mhm.
know. Uh, and but you're like you're to your point, DJ. Some like you have to be on so much, particularly as a
Yeah.
founder and a seller, from customer to team to an
Mhm.
investor, external stakeholders. That by the time that you get through all that, you're just like, yo, like put me in a dark room.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Put me in a dark,
Yeah.
Yeah.
No.
put me in a dark room and let me ride it out. You know what I mean? But
You know, Nikki,
yeah.
I will say though, one of the things I've been doing, in as part of my process in business is like, you talk about the pre-call plan. And
Mhm.
typically the pre-call plan is focused on, all right, product features, competition, maybe even like, maybe there's background information about the customer, whatever it is. But what I've added into my pre-call plan is like, what energy am I showing up with? Like how
Mm,
am I going to show up with the right energy to be able to, because I feel that I know that people can feel that energy when you are on a Zoom call, especially if you're
yep.
live, right? But like even I think people think or maybe a thought that energy is not as important if you're just doing this video type of chat. And it's and in my opinion, it's wrong. I mean, you have to have a plan and be intentional about it. So that's something I've implemented post COVID that I think has been helpful. But at the end of the week, you're on 6 to 8 of these a day, and
Mhm.
that's when I go to my chair And I sit
Yes.
back, drink the hot water with lemon, right, Harry? And
Yes.
watch TV. So but yeah, that's one thing I would add for sure.
Yeah. I
So
love that.
I got a quick question around, you're talking about, again, in I just mentioned pre-call planning, but we're talking about, just reading a room, being curious. As a man, many of our decision makers that Harry and I talk to are females.
Mhm.
In the, just in the pharma companies and some of the companies that we work with. What should we know, and or like where are we missing the mark as men when we're presenting and engaging with women in business?
I mean, DJ, the fact that you are asking that question is what is missing. Like the fact that you are asking that question is putting you exactly where I wish more men would be. So first of all, thank you for asking the question.
Absolutely.
Sincerely. And really that's it. It's actually trying to show up more present and in the right mindset to connect with whoever you're with. I think that buyers in general, they come to an interaction with their defenses up. They don't want to get swindled. They don't want to pay too much. They don't want to be forced into a buying decision for something that they don't feel like they need. So they come in with this shell, right? Like, okay, you are on a need to know basis. I will give you as much as I am comfortable giving you. And don't
Mm-hmm.
you ask for any more than that. And
Right.
so I think that when it's a female buyer and a male seller dynamic, you kind of have to add an extra 20% to the thickness of that wall that is already
Okay.
up just because of the dynamic. So it becomes even more critical for us as sellers to show them that we are not a threat. And that might sound dramatic, but that's literally what we're showing them. Like
Mm-hmm.
and the way that I like to visualize this is I am not on the opposite side of the table as you trying to get something for me. I am here as your partner to sit on the same side of the table as you to understand if I can provide value, and if so, what that value is. How can I help? And when you
Hmm.
come from that perspective, people, okay, like
Yeah.
they take a
Yeah.
deep breath, they relax their shoulders and they say, "Okay, so actually like this is what I need help with," right? And then they open this incredible thing happens where they open up to you and they start like taking all the skeletons out of the closet. They're like, "Okay, you asked me this, but really you need to also know about this, this and this." And this guy, Don, he has not let a deal past for the past 6 months, and in order to get this deal done we're going to need to do this has got to be the plan. And all of a sudden
Wow.
you guys are on the same side of the table working together as
Mm-hmm.
partners for a shared win, right? So when we stop viewing it as this oppositional, I'm on this side, you're on that side, I'm the seller, you're the buyer, then we can start to have an equitable conversation where it's like my entire I have said this before and I will say it again. I will say it on every single podcast that I am on. I care more about my buyer as a human being than what I can sell them. And I mean it. Like
It's really
if
cool.
it I will not sell a bad deal. And also, like, your team hates when you sell a bad deal because it's just harder to
Right.
implement and they end up churning. So
Yeah.
my job there is not to figure out if I can close you. My job there is to figure out if there is a good deal to be had. And when there's a good deal to be had, that means that you have a legitimate need that I can help with.
Solving for, yeah.
And so like when you come with that partnership mentality, the guard is let down. And I think what male sellers may have more tendency to lean towards is this dominant power stance, which I don't think is effective.
Mm-hmm. It's great.
So
Thank you. Appreciate
DJ,
that.
that was a good question. That was a good question,
Thanks.
man.
Thanks, man. I
Respect.
appreciate
It
it.
doesn't
That
happen
is
a
a good
lot.
question.
I'm kidding. Great question, dude. God, I'm in admiration for that question. That's awesome.
Yeah,
You know, I love it. I love it. So one thing that I was thinking about, knowing that we're getting a chance to talk to you is, we've all been sellers that are like have a quota or a number
Mhm.
or, it's at plan goal, etc. I know, especially in my early days of selling, I did medical device as well, Nikki. I was at Stryker for a number of years.
Yeah.
And like, hitting your number, getting home, as we called it, was our identity,
Yes.
and the quicker you got home, the better, obviously. Nobody wants to be trying to chase it around, holidays.
Mhm.
But, there'd be the legends that would get home in like September, right?
Yeah.
And what we all know that happens when you hit your number in September is people kind of start to gatekeep like deals
Yep.
to get next year rolling, because that the quota is just going to be bigger next year,
Yeah.
right?
They start sandbagging.
Right. Start sandbagging. But speaking of like identity, like, why do so many sellers like tie their self-worth to like hitting this number,
This
the
is
number?
such a good question and such
Like,
a
how do we get out
big,
of based stuff,
yeah, for so many reasons. And uncoupling those two things is probably some of the hardest work that we can do as sellers. And I can get into kind of some of the frameworks around that I have around that. But the reason why that happens, well, first of all, I think there's a very specific type of person that gets into sales. So I think that there's a correlation between the high achieving perfectionist control freak and the seller. There happens to be like this big Venn diagram, right? So I think that personality type likes sales because they feel like they have control over the outcomes, which is such a slippery slope because we don't have as much control as we would like or hope. Um, and so those personality types usually are that way because they feel like their self-worth is based on their achievements, right? Like that's why we are overachieving perfectionists, because somewhere deep down inside, probably in childhood, we were made to believe that we are as valuable as our achievements. So this is some deep rooted shit we're talking about here. Okay. This is not like, oh, because I get paid when I hit. Like, no, it comes from self worth within our psyche. So in order to start to, and it's a very slippery slope, because when we are on top of the mountain and we are exceeding quota, it feeds us like nothing else. We feel like we are on top of the world. I knew I was the best. I told you I was the best. Look at these numbers. They don't lie. Like it's a really convenient story when we are at the top of the mountain. But if you are in sales, to keep yourself there, you will end up driving yourself into depression, anxiety, addiction, burnout, right? So you risk pushing yourself beyond healthy limits to either stay there, or you might be at the wrong place at the wrong time and just have a terrible year and you don't hit your numbers. And who am I then? So it's a very risky game to play. So I don't suggest it. If you are one of these sellers who very closely ties their outcomes to their self-worth, like we need to start at least, not that like you can ever totally undo that, because I don't think that I haven't seen that. I think once you totally undo that, you get out of sales, honestly, because then you're like, why am I doing this?
Right.
But while we start to strengthen this emotional resilience, it comes from having a better relationship with yourself, building self-trust, knowing who you are, liking who you are, so that when you do have a bad year, you can tell yourself, okay, I know who I am. I know what I'm good at. Could I have done some things better? Absolutely. Does this mean that I am a terrible, horrible failure of a human being? Of course not. Right. So like it starts with that internal relationship with yourself. And that is so much of the work that I do with my coaching clients, is strengthening that relationship and self-trust.
It's really good. You mentioned challenger sale before, and
Yeah.
and there's so many different sales models. What's interesting about that one, the 3 T's: teach, tailor, and create tension.
Mhm.
How do you create healthy tension with your clients when you're in a sales
It is
situation?
so funny that you asked me specifically about that word, because on another podcast that I was on, he said, you know what you're really good at, Nikki, in your videos and your content, you're really good at creating tension. And I was like,
Was that
really?
right?
I was so surprised to hear. I was like, oh, like I don't even mean to do that. And I think that, unfortunately, and this is probably an annoying answer, I think that that's just naturally, that's something that happens naturally for me in the way that I communicate. Um, but yeah, I can't quite put my finger
Yeah.
on it.
You know
Would you
what's
say?
interesting about that?
Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I was just saying, is it a direct style then? Is that maybe that
I
is it
think
what you're?
probably. I think, I was trying to understand because I posted a video shortly after we had that conversation, and he said, "See, there it is. There's that tension I'm talking about." And I was looking at it, and it was one of my very direct style videos where I was speaking directly to the camera, to my audience, and I was like questioning them on something, or like asking them a question that like
Mm-hmm.
really made them maybe look for a minute. Hopefully, I'm sure most people that watched it didn't look, but maybe a couple people looked. And I do think it's that direct style of communication that
Okay.
probably creates some of that tension. And
Yeah.
it has served me well in my career.
Mm-hmm.
I am a very direct communicator, and I don't do this whole like permission-based opener thing, like, "Oh, may I, do you mind?" Like, I am more like a direct communicator, and I think that probably aids
Okay.
in creating
That's
that
I
helpful.
think
tension.
here's the deal. To me, this reminds me of like, and I haven't been single for 21 years,
Uh-oh.
but
We're going
it's
back to
hard.
single Harry. Let's
Yeah,
lean into
it's been
this.
a,
Go
it's
ahead.
been a
Go ahead.
minute.
Single
It's been a
Harry.
minute. And I'm not saying I had game, so
Because
I don't want
listen,
listeners to.
I'm taking notes and I will tell Courtney all of this too, by the
Yeah.
way.
If
So
this
this
is
is
being recorded.
Bring
Yeah.
her on. Bring her on. Tell her to join. Tell her, hey, send her the link
Let's
to the.
FaceTime her. Let's
Yeah.
FaceTime her.
No, but like this reminds me of like, being at a bar and the willingness to go up to somebody and spark conversation and
Mhm.
create tension, right? To like kind of get them to pay attention and to see where something can go, right? Because like, and there's certainly like, so confidence is, like
Mm,
people become, build confidence based on building capability, largely. I think there's many components. I'm not trying to oversimplify it, but I think once you develop a capability or aptitude, your confidence increases, right?
mhm.
And as your confidence increases, like that fear meter. I'm not saying this it's not saying it's absence of fear, but that fear meter changes
Yep.
where you're less fearful to say the authentic thing or the thing that comes right to your mind. And then once you start doing that with that limited fear and you see the results, then you get a taste of that. And then your willingness to ask the tough question or to create the tension, is much greater. So like
Yep.
you begin to approach somebody in a bar, you see that, oh wow, like there's receptivity, right? Then like you're less, you're less timid to do so in the future,
Yep.
and so I think it's like a lot of reps. Certainly there's a personality component, right? But I think there's a lot of reps and like demonstrating a level of aptitude that leads to a level of confidence that you're
Yep.
just really, really don't, the swings and misses, you recognize that they're going to be there, and so like the willingness to create the tension is just kind of becomes part of your repertoire,
Yeah.
um,
It's funny, Harry, that you said that you don't have a big appetite for small talk. I was laughing because I'm the same way, but I am a true extrovert, but I don't do small talk. I just get straight to the heart of it. I'm like,
yeah,
what is happening like in your marriage right now? Like what
yeah,
is like,
yeah,
are you a happy person? Have you been like, what are your deepest fears and anxieties? Like I am a truth seeker. I want to know.
Mm,
I have this craving to know
yeah.
the truth of what you're feeling. Like let's cut through all of those layers and like let's get to the good stuff. And
yeah,
so I
No.
think in my communication style, like I'm not afraid to ask those questions because that's just part of my DNA, but also it helps cut through like, okay, yeah, all these little surface level things, like let's understand what's really happening here. Like why is this
Mm,
situation coming up in the first place? Like how is this impacting the business? How is this impacting your job? Like how much pressure are you getting from management to make the right decision in this purchase? Like geez, that must
right.
feel overwhelming. Like And so I think that trying to get to the heart of what's really going on with that, like, the person that you're talking to is your portal into the truth. And everyone may have a different version depending on who you're talking to, but really trying to understand from their perspective, what is going on? What's the real issue here? And how can I help? I think that people are not always used to being communicated to like that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it kind of creates that on its own.
Well, I love that truth seeker, and that's huge. I mean, because I mean, I think about it as a coach. I'm thinking about it as a leader. If you're operating with that as your compass, you're much more capable and able of giving really good advice and sound direction if it's rooted in truth. And so I
Sure.
think as you know, and then I even think about, like, how do I become a better truth seeker? I mean, I think it comes to my curiosity and what questions do I ask, and how do I stay engaged and intentional and thoughtful, with my responses, with my listening. And so I really like that as a leader. And again, that's something that AI and technology is going to have a hard time duplicating. And I think it's awesome that you're unpacking that for us, because I think that's a very clear direction on how we can become better as leaders, as coaches. It's really good
But do you know
stuff.
where it starts, DJ?
Where's that?
Seeking truth within ourselves.
Mm,
So it starts with asking ourselves the hard question and figuring out and looking within and saying, why do I do that? Why? Oh, I have this tendency. That's really interesting. Where is that coming from? Am I
Yeah.
actively choosing that, or is this a behavioral pattern that for whatever reason I've picked up?
mm,
So I think the way
that's
that
great.
we start to connect with we it's almost like the price of admission for accessing other people's truth is accessing truth within yourself. So
Yeah, it's
you're
powerful.
not going to be adept at teasing out what's really going on if you are not adept at teasing out what's really going on at home.
Hmm.
So that is always where I start. You cannot connect with your buyer if you are disconnected from yourself.
Hmm.
So it always comes back to the
Like that.
relationship with self. Yeah.
Well, and Nikki, I would love to get some insights from like somebody like yourself who's pretty tapped into this. Like, what's your strategies for that? Because
Yeah.
we all have our blind spots.
Mhm.
Like, even I might be fully aware. Okay, I need to tap in. I need to really figure out, like, why do I keep doing this?
Mhm.
Let me reflect on it. I can do some, like, what tools, like, what's like, how can I start to tap into that, knowing that I have some bias,
Yeah.
or blind spots. Do I need an accountability partner?
Mm.
Like, do I give them permission to help me with that? Like, how does that, like, how would I approach that?
Yeah, so the first thing that I do is I have to slow down and get
Mhm.
quiet. I'm so busy and go, 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 go that if I do not make time to slow down and get quiet, I can totally ignore myself for weeks on end, right? So it starts with making space to be with yourself. And for most people, this simple act is incredibly uncomfortable. They don't want to just sit with themselves. And if there is resistance around sitting with yourself, that is a clue that there's a disconnect going on. We're kind of afraid of what's going to come up, right? Or we don't want to deal with what's going on.
Mhm.
And so if there's resistance around sitting with yourself, that's where we need to start. We need to ask why. Why am I having resistance with just being quiet with me? Um this gets pretty deep, but I made a choice, an active conscious choice when I was 28 years old that I was going to stop hating my life partner, me.
Mhm.
I said, I realized that the only guarantees in life is that you are born with yourself and you will die with yourself. And imagine going through your entire life disliking this person.
Mm.
So I
Hmm.
very consciously started to reject any negative self-talk. And for me, what that looks like is physically in the mirror. I don't have to do this anymore because I've healed a lot since this time. But I would physically stop myself in the mirror. I would look at myself and I would say, "Nope, we're not doing that anymore. I love you. I have your back, and I've got you." And I would physically out loud stop this negative spirally self-talk. since then, I have a pretty comfortable, good relationship with myself. I actually enjoy my own company. I actually like who I am. I'm actually proud of who I am. Do I have areas where I need work and growth? Absolutely. We all do. But am I willing to sit and look and work on those things? Yes. So it starts there with our relationship with ourselves. And then, we just make that kind of a part of our everyday activity. Is we come back to that, and we recognize when we are feeling totally disconnected. And there will be signs. It's just like we distract ourselves with activities, we numb our feelings with substances. I start to feel itchy, like, oh, my thing is shopping. I'm like, oh, I need to spend money, I need to shop. Like I'm feeling like hectic in my own body. And so that's when I know, like, whoa, girl, like we need to we need to chill for a minute. So you just start to kind of pick up on those signals. And then self-discipline is doing the annoying thing that we don't want
Yeah.
to do, that doesn't feel good in the moment, but we know is good for us and pays off in the long run. Right. So it's just kind of coming back to that.
Yeah.
It's really interesting. I'm thinking about like the opportunities to kind of just sit still and be alone with yourself, and like a lot of folks talk about a morning routine. We just had a
Mhm.
podcast around that. But then I was thinking about, let's go back 20 years. Like, where were you alone by yourself, no distractions? The bathroom was one of those, right? Like,
Yeah,
you're
it's
just
true.
like, right? Like, so I
Yeah.
said, I'll give you guys a quick question. I looked up this real quick. What percent of millennials and Gen Zs, use their phone or admit to using their phone while they're in the bathroom? What percentage do you think that is right now?
100%.
It gotta be high. Yeah. 98. I don't
Everyone.
know.
It's
Like
Yeah.
I'm sure
it's
somebody's a
it's
liar in
very high.
that survey.
That's right. I mean, it's clear. It's above 90%. You say,
Yeah.
Yeah.
in the studies, and you think about that, where it's like, I mean, that's a time where just like,
Yeah, we
you
can't
should just
even
kind of
sit
think,
in the freaking
right?
toilet by
Right.
ourselves,
You
right?
can't just sit and think, right? Like, just about, and I mean, and so I think these times we have to be even more intentional about these,
Yeah.
making space for this, because if we're not, we'll find ourselves just always, like you said, consuming something, whether it's clothes, food, information,
Alcohol. Mhm.
negativity, alcohol, substances, whatever it is. And it's this constant where how do we become intentional about just slowing down? The other thing is too, Harry, I was thinking about this with after sporting events and games. The kids will get in the car and immediately they're just scrolling. There's no time
Mhm.
to like really process what just happened,
What just
in the
happened?
game.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
like, win or
Yeah.
lose, doesn't matter. They're on to the watching what the rest of the world is doing. And
Yep.
I gotta believe that's not healthy, over time in
Yeah.
aggregate. So anyways,
Yep.
there's some things I was thinking about and looked up as a result.
Some
Harry,
good
thoughts
data
around
there,
that, man?
DJ. That's some good
Hey
data,
man,
man.
listen,
You know what I mean? Hey,
shout out to
data.
Chat
That,
GPT.
yeah, that's that doo doo. That's that doo doo data. That's that doo doo
Not
data.
sponsored.
Bathroom data.
The
Golly.
doo-doo day.
Doo doo
Sorry,
data.
thank you.
Yeah, man. Bathroom talk. Love it. Love it. No, but like that's yeah. I mean, it
That's
is fascinating. I mean, I was just trying to like do a little mental inventory. Like, okay, do I ever
yeah.
take time with myself? I think I'd be lying if I said I do it purposefully, intentionally, or
Mhm.
whatever. I think, like for example, when I drive up to Cleveland or Columbus, DJ, when we kind of meet halfway or
Yeah.
whatever, I like driving because
Yeah.
I just feel like
Right.
I'm rolling dice. I'm rolling dice getting to the airport these days. But also like, other than maybe calling somebody like yourself or whoever on the phone and
Yeah.
catching up, I don't really turn on the radio, you know what I mean?
Yeah, me
Or
neither.
listen
I
or
feel like when you have kids, you drive in silence.
oh my gosh, dude. Yeah.
You're
Mm,
like,
I
I
just drive
just
in
no
complete
noise.
silence. And
Yeah.
it's honestly some of the
so great,
best
right?
solo time
Isn't
you
it
can
cool?
get. But
Yep. Mhm.
but but I just think that like trying to find time and for me it's probably in the mornings, maybe that pre-workout where there's 10-15 minutes where you can kind of implement that just quiet time, whether it be prayer, whether it be
Mhm.
meditation, whether it be breath work,
Yep.
whatever suits one, that would be a good opportunity probably to do it.
Yep.
Yep.
But I love this. I love this. So as we, close out, I'm curious, like, in sales, we're constantly handling some level of pressure,
Yep.
right? I mean, it's like an athlete. I mean, the pressure's there, the scoreboard, in this case, the numbers, the quota, et cetera. We talked about how that can kind of sometimes, if we're not careful, shape our identity. But like, for somebody that's like, uber confident and super capable and has done this and now teaching people how to do it, like, how do you help people think about pressure?
Honestly, the best thing is perspective. Perspective and zooming out. I think the ability to zoom in and out of your life at different times is a really valuable skill. I also love playing out a worst case scenario. Like, okay, let's roll the tape on if everything goes horribly wrong, And so usually it's not as bad as we catastrophize in our head. Um, but gaining perspective is crucial. Like we can be so tunnel vision sometimes that it feels like that number is the only thing that matters. I have children. We all have children. Like I can't afford to think that that number is the only thing or the most important thing in my life. If I give that number all of my energy and output, I have nothing left to give my children. And so having a family has really helped me keep myself in check in terms of my sales career because I give now, and okay, I'm not like a perfect example because I work a lot. Like I never really stop. But I'm not willing to give my entire self to my job anymore because the people that suffer are my husband and children. So, zooming out and reminding myself what really matters. I also have a career now behind me, which really helps. And I know that like for newer sellers, it's a different experience because you feel like you have something to prove.
Yeah.
I don't really have anything to prove anymore. I'm not interested in proving anything to anyone anymore. So, I realize that, I've had enough experiences now where I realize that my best year is not a clear indication of my skills, and my worst year is not a clear indication of my skills.
Yeah.
I'm somewhere in the middle. Right. So like I also take my outcomes less personally now, but that has come with experience and maturity. And so that's why I hope that by working with people that maybe are earlier on in their career, I can reassure them that they will survive their worst year. And, to not take all the credit, whether, they overcome, whether they overachieve or whether they fall short.
Love it.
Really good.
Love it.
Love it.
All right, Nikki, I got like four little rapid fire questions.
All right, cool.
I got
quick
one,
answers.
so it's gonna be 5 total.
All right, I'm ready.
You got one?
Let's go.
You want to go first?
I got
you want to
one.
go first? You want to go last?
Yeah, I'll go first, then you can rattle off the 4.
Yeah.
All right. What coach inspires you?
Coach?
Yeah, like coach or leader inspires you.
Oh my gosh, what a good question. I feel under the gun. What coach inspires me? Are we talking like sports or professionally?
It could be a leader. It could be like I'm thinking of you as a coach, you as a leader. It could be it could be sports. It could be business.
There's a lot of creators in my space and people that have built incredible empires on LinkedIn and sales training. And it is a very convoluted area to try and discern like who is worth admiration or not. But I've had some conversations with people in my space that have left me really, really inspired, of people that have been able to build something incredible and really come from the heart. Ian Cognac is one of those people. He's huge in my space. He is an incredible sales coach. I have had a one-on-one conversation with him. I know that he comes from a place of service.
That's
and
cool.
he has always stayed true to himself no matter how big he gets. And so he is someone who I wouldn't mind modeling my career after.
That's cool. No, that's great.
Love it. Love it. All right. Favorite pre-call mental reset?
Yeah. So getting quiet, taking a moment to get quiet with myself and remember why I'm doing this. And it's to understand and connect with whoever I'm about to talk to. It is not about me. It is about them and figuring out how I can serve them. And so I will literally get quiet, close my eyes, and try and get into the head of who they are. So I'll ask myself questions like, let's say I'm talking to Shelly in 10 minutes. I'm like, okay, how is Shelly's? Does she drive to work? Does she work from home? I wonder if she's married. Does she have kids? Is she stressed out? How did she wake up this morning? Is she getting pressure from her boss? Like, what did she do this weekend? What are her hobbies? Like, I will really try and understand, just in my head, ask myself questions so that I can understand who Shelly is as a human being and remind myself that she's a human being, not a buyer or
Love it.
prospect.
Really
So,
good.
yeah.
Love that. I love that. What's from a client perspective, and I really mean this from the mindset side,
Okay.
mindset and sales.
Mhm.
What one reflection question you love to give clients that you're coaching?
Why do you think you did that?
I was about to answer that, DJ.
I know. I felt like yeah, I don't know. I don't know why.
Good question.
Did it.
Yeah. So
That's that direct healthy tension I'm talking about. I love it.
Yeah. So much of what I do with my clients is simply helping them better understand themselves. That's really all that I do.
Mhm.
And then challenge them on some of their self-beliefs. So if they say, I'm not good at doing this thing, I'll be like, well, hold on there. Hold on a minute. What makes you think that? Or someone recently told me, like, I'm a quitter. I know that I'm a quitter. And I'm like, well, hold on. Let's unpack that for a second. Why, like, what makes you think you're a quitter? It's so interesting how quickly we will label ourselves as something and then we hold on to that story. And then if we just reframe the thing, then we can reframe it in a positive light for ourselves. It starts to change how we perceive ourselves. So helping people understand why they do what they do and then actively choose the story that they want to tell themselves and who they're going to be and how they're going to show up.
Yeah, love it. This last one is just more about making sure our audience knows where to find you.
Okay.
Where can people find you?
Yeah.
What's your handles? Like, where they find you? I mean, I know you're on LinkedIn. Like, what's the website?
She got
Give
some
us a little
selfie
bit
game. I
deep.
saw the selfie game on LinkedIn
Yeah.
too.
Yeah. I'm a
Respect.
shameless selfie girl. I'm a
Respect there.
millennial. That's what we do,
Hey,
you know?
I'm down.
Yeah,
Yeah.
DJ can't relate. DJ can't relate.
Yeah.
DJ can't relate. He's a different
Yeah.
generation. He's a different generation
Yeah.
than us.
So I am on LinkedIn. My website is mindsetandsales.com, but it is being revamped right now. So pardon the dust.
No judgment.
But hopefully I will release a new website relatively soon. And Instagram is private for right now. I'm too much of a
Understood.
loose cannon on Instagram. You know what I mean? Like, I can't be trusted with my stories because they go in weird places sometimes. So
Well, now I'm on the edge of my seat.
I know
Now I'm
you
like,
can try,
right.
you can try, but I need to know you to let you into
Yeah.
the Instagram circle. Yeah.
Got you.
But
Okay. Well, listen, Nikki posts great stuff on LinkedIn, and I think we touched on that. And so if you're on LinkedIn, go check her out there. She's got some good content, and just, she's an open book there, and I enjoy following the journey. Nikki, we're grateful to have you. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for
Hopefully,
spending time.
get to do a few more of these. I think
this was
we'll
awesome.
get
You
to
guys
be in
are so much fun to talk to. I have
No,
so
I
much
appreciate
respect for
that.
what you're doing. And I'm honored to be here. Thank you for the invite.
Love it. We'll see you next time.
All
Hey,
right.
folks, we'll see you next time on the
Bye,
Limitless Minds
guys.
podcast. And remember, you don't have to be sick to get better.